What's up, everybody? It's Socrdave, David Kitchen. This is the InsidersTV NBA show, and it's going to be a fun one. Joining me, two of the hottest minds in the daily fantasy NBA realm. The one, the only, Drew Dinkmeyer. Don't call him Dinkenmeyer. You know him from RotoExperts, at Drew Dinkmeyer. Dink Piece is his daily fantasy NBA handle. He is the man with the plan. And then this guy, the guy that is all over Twitter, the guy that his articles were the first articles that I read, Scott Malewig, and he is with DraftDay at sports_25 to life. He is the man, the myth, and the legend. Scott, it is a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thanks, Dave.
So before we get into it, I kind of teased some big news on Twitter, and man, today is just like a dream come true. You know, when you have stuff in mind, you always, it's great to pursue, but having you guys on the show and making this announcement it's really, for me, it's a big step in what we're doing here at Fantasy Insiders. And so the big announcement is that DraftDay is actually going to be the main sponsor of our show. And the reason why I'm so excited is that DraftDay was really the company that I wanted to sponsor the show the most because of their NBA product and because of their NBA knowledge. If you don't know, Scott and Andrew there at DraftDay are big-time NBA players. They're going to be on the show this whole season, and as guests. And we're also going to be doing some stuff for DraftDay. So DraftDay bracket contest for listener or viewers of the Fantasy Insider show is going to be pretty cool. Scott, I know that you and I have been talking about this for a while. Just kind of talk about what you're looking forward to this season, as far as just getting on the airwaves and talking daily fantasy NBA.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the most fun part of this for me is that I get to come on here and talk about fantasy basketball all the time because, like you mentioned, we have 4 guys that play a lot of daily fantasy basketball in our office, and so we all spend a ton of time working on it. We all read Dink Piece's article every day. It's just going to be a lot of fun being able to talk some basketball. Like you said, hopefully we run a sweet bracket contest for the Fantasy Insiders. That should be a lot of fun. We have a lot of different game types that other sites don't offer, so it'll be nice to get some people to try out those, stuff like that. So,
yeah, I mean, it's we're going to be – the thing about DraftDay, and this is what I tell people, DraftDay is probably the most fun site for daily fantasy because you have target games, you have the bracket games, and the bracket games is like March Madness all over again. So the bracket games are really fun, and then you have your basic NBA games, and Scott, you're in charge of salary, but you also write an article the day before tomorrow that previously you wrote on the fake basketball, and like I was saying, it was that was the first ever daily fantasy NBA article I ever read. Was your article? I did not miss it each day, and I try not to miss it each day now. So you're still writing that though on Draft Day.
Yeah, I write it almost every day. Sometimes I take like the 2-game Thursdays off and stuff like that, just because. I mean, it's just a lot of work, and I have a lot of football stuff I have to do for Draft Day as far as operational stuff on those days. So every once in a while I take a Thursday off and have a little nice, not relaxing day. So, but every other day I've been writing it, and it's been doing really well traffic-wise. I think I brought a lot of the people with me that were reading it, which makes me feel like I'm doing something worthwhile. So that's great.
Definitely, and that's something that we'll be recapping here. When you write the article, or not when you write the article, I know when you write the article it prepares you, but you also help with the salaries there at Draft Day, correct?
Yeah, Andrew and I work on those together. I would think that we probably have like at least 20% of it is like personal touch to it. Maybe not quite that much because we do have a really good algorithm that I have to give a lot of credit for our salaries. But I mean, we go through them every day before we post the games to make sure, as best we can, that we don't miss anybody too bad or anything like that.
I think you did miss somebody today, but that's okay. The only reason why I know is because he's my favorite player in the world.
Oh, I know exactly who you're talking about.
Who do you think it is?
Is it Della Vadova or whatever his name is?
It's not. I do like him, but it's John Jenkins. I love me some John Jenkins.
Okay. I saw you talking to Davis about him on Twitter already.
Yeah, he was.
And I got Bo Cherney from Hawks Hoop or whatever it is tweeting at me that I forgot about John Jenkins today. So he loves him too. He's a big Hawks Raider for True Hoop. So.
Oh, Cherney mentioned you?
Yeah, I said something about, I think I retweeted Davis's tweet about them not having another shooting guard or something, and I said something else, and then Bo Cherney got on me because he loves John Jenkins too.
Jenkins is the absolute man. He just can't play any defense. So that some people frown upon that. We are going to talk about some of the games, but quick before we get into that, I want to just give you both a plug. Drew, they can find your stuff on RotoExperts. And did you write the article today, or is that Leone?
No, Mike's got the article today, and I haven't seen an email come through that's been posted, so I assume it's in editing. Usually our deadline's around 3:15. So it usually gets posted sometimes between 4 and 5 Eastern, along with the cheat sheet shortly thereafter. So we've got two different services. You can bundle the packages. One is a cheat sheets that has site-specific recommendations for DraftStreet, DraftKings, and FanDuel. And then another is a full write-up and analysis column that basically breaks each position down, features a different daily site in each of those positions, highlights the top plays across the industry and the value plays across the industry, usually somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000 words is the column. Pretty in-depth stuff. And you can get access to it over at RotoExperts. You click on the Daily tab and then go to the Daily Fantasy Rundown, and that's where all of our information is. It is subscriber-based, so if you're looking for free content, I would say Scott's content is probably the best on the web that's free, in my opinion, and something that I read every day. But if you're looking for subscriber-based content, something that's a little bit more exclusive, our stuff on RotoExperts is a good take.
Definitely, and not Davis has been crushing the articles on Fantasy Insiders. He had a really good article yesterday and today. Some more free content, and then we already talked about a little bit about Draft Day, but you guys have a new promotion that came out today. DraftDay.com/snow. Is that correct, Scott?
Yeah, that actually, I believe that was posted either last night or this morning. There's a ton of stuff going on in that promo. It's obviously capped off with a $33 30K NFL game, which I believe is week 14. And there's a whole lot of other stuff going on. If you sit in head-to-heads at Draft Day at all, we're going to grab some with the old Santa account and give you some free wins. There's a couple different promotions to win, like an Xbox One, a PS4. I think for Thanksgiving tomorrow during football, there's a winner-take-all for $500 of Christmas shopping money. So we got a lot of little fun stuff going on with that.
Very cool. And you can go to draftday.com/snow for that. Let's jump into the games, and let's jump into while people are probably here to see us. Instead of my slicked back hair and my clean cut shaven, I felt like with Scott coming on, I needed to make sure that I was clean cut because we can only have one scraggly person on here. So let's talk about the games, though. What's the biggest news, Drew, that you're seeing out there today?
There's a lot of injury information out there. I think the thing that probably had the two things that have the most ripple down effects are, Brooklyn is still beaten and battered. And so they're going to be without Brooke Lopez, Jason Terry, Deron Williams, Andre Karolinko. So they're going to keep playing kind of the shortened rotation and the featured values that you've been using. Guys like Sean Livingston and Andre Bloch, Paul Pierce, Joe Johnson are all still going to have value around the industry. And the other one, a team that hasn't been as beaten and battered this season, but is tonight, is Atlanta, who's taking on Houston. They're going to be without Sheldon Mack, without Lou Williams on a back-to-back, without Kyle Korver. That really thins out the guard rotation and opens up some value for guys like Cartier Martin, Potentially Dennis Schroeder will get some extra minutes at the backup point guard spot with no Sheldon Mack out. And then John Jenkins as well, who we talked about earlier. All those guys are exceptionally cheap, and you probably only need one with all the other values there are out there to fill your lineups around. So that'll be something I'll be continuing to monitor just to see exactly who gets the start between Jenkins and Cartier Martin. I think it's going to be Martin, but that's something we want to see as it gets closer to tip.
And on the other side, you have James Harden and Francisco Garcia. Garcia is going to play, but Feigen, one of the beat writers for the Rockets, basically said that he was limping during shoot-around. That's not good if you're limping during shoot-around for his prospects. So maybe Omri Caspi, I don't know. But you have James Harden also that says his foot feels good, and he's still a game-time decision. Scott, do you think he plays? What's your overall feel of this Rockets-Hawks game? It seems like there could be a lot of value in there. And Mike5754 is talking about on Twitter how he's going to stay away because he thinks it's a blowout. Your thoughts on this game between the Hawks and Rockets?
I mean, yeah, if Harden's not playing, which I'm tentatively expecting him not to play, I'd be pretty surprised. As you mentioned, their beat writers don't sound very confident in him right now. And then they also had the issues with Garcia. If Harden's out, this game's going to be a lot closer than a blowout, I would imagine. I think the biggest value here is, like, obviously the Hawks guards. You got to like Jeremy Lin a lot. I pretty much avoided him on when did they play last Monday because he had Tony Allen on him. And his numbers when Harden's out of the lineup are just insane. And it was a little bit easier just to kind of fade his like medium price everywhere because of Allen on Monday. But it's going to be really hard not to play him tonight if Harden's out. I think he's the best play in that game by far if Harden's not playing.
Definitely. Your thoughts on Drew? You and I have lots of conversations about Al Horford and Dwight Howard, and they're going to be playing against each other tonight. Horford was on track to crack the 30-minute mark last night, which was big, and then they were down a lot, so they took him out knowing that they were going to play tonight. And you have Howard on the other end, who he was supposed to have a big game the other night against Memphis and Koufos outscored him and everybody else. But your thoughts on this post-game matchup going on tonight?
I'm probably going to try to avoid it, to be honest. I think Horford's priced well in a couple different spots around the industry, so I'm more likely to play Al than I am Dwight. Dwight, just that matchup against Koufos was so frustrating, and I was talking to one of my co-writers, Mike Leone, about this after the game, and he kind of mentioned to me that he thinks Dwight at this point is just the GPP in a tournament play. And I'm starting to kind of feel along those lines as well. The box scores just aren't consistent enough. The price is never really going to get to a point that you're going to feel really great about the potential downside in the box score. So, Horford's not a bad defender, and he's not a guy who, does a lot around the rim. And this Hawks team isn't a team that plays a lot around the rim. So that decreases block opportunities for Howard, which is really how he racks up quick point totals. So I'm probably avoiding Howard. I will have Horford on some draft street qualifier teams, but I'm probably not going to use him on my main team lineup now. Just been frustrated of watching the timidness of late. And a little bit concerned, even if Harden doesn't play, just a little bit concerned that they could get blown out. I mean, they got blown out at home by Orlando last night, so he probably won't be in many of my cash game lineups, but is definitely a guy that I'm considering for qualifiers.
Don't knock Orlando. They are on the uptick. And
they are, but they're not Houston at home.
It is true. Oladipo went nuts, man. He's one of those guys that can just grab points in bunches and then kind of go silent for a little bit. But it's going to be fun to see that Magic rotation, and we'll talk a little bit about them in a second. But this Hawks-Rockets, it has the third highest total. The line right now is a little under 9, it's at 8.5. So we'll see. We'll see. I don't think you want to avoid this game, even in cash games. I think especially, like you were saying, Scott, Andrew, that you want to look at the guard play. And even Teague, if he is moderately priced, is going to be someone that you might want to look at. And if Harden is playing, I'm still fading him. I'm just not going to trust him that much. But Gustavo Ion, do you see him being any sort of value? I know he's really cheap across On some sites, like on DraftDay, he's 5,000. Cartier Martin is 5,000. If you had the choice to pick between those two, I'm guessing you would go Martin.
Yeah, that's where I'd go for sure. Like Drew mentioned, he's expected to get the start tonight. I'd be kind of surprised if they started Jenkins with how much more Martin's been playing as a backup at both wings right now. So I think that's the way I'd go. It looked like last night that Ione picked up more minutes because of how bad Paul Millsap was playing. And I don't know really what's wrong with Paul Millsap. I don't know if he's hurt or if he just has no confidence right now. But I played him on Draft Street last night, and he was just awful.
Yeah, he had 14 fantasy points last night, which for Paul Millsap playing against the Magic is not good. Speaking of the Magic, though, the second highest over/under is that Magic Sixers game. This is going to be like one of those ugly/fun games to watch, just because they're going to be going up and down the floor, and there's a lot of players. I know that Davis, he was high in Michael Carter-Williams in today's article on FantasyInsiders.com. So we'll see if you guys are high on MCW tonight. He's another guy that is kind of boom or bust, it seems like.
Yeah, I think the challenge, Davis mentioned him on Draft Street, and it's 17K. I mean, he's technically priced fairly because he's averaging 34.5 Draft Street points per game. But if you look at the game log, I mean, it's like 45 plus or 25 and below. Yeah. And for a cash game lineup, that makes me a little bit nervous. And Orlando is not a bad defensive team. That's actually why they've shown a big improvement this year, is because they are a lot better defensively. And Jameer doesn't turn the ball over a ton. That's the other part. Jameer's a guy who's more of a low turnover point guard than some of these high volume point guards. So if Carter Williams gets a lot of his value out of steals, I think it creates an environment that's a little bit more boom or bust even than normal with this individual matchup. So I love Carter Williams, love the talent. I don't really love the price across the industry, and that's what's making me consider him more for tournaments than for main team lineups.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, Draft Street for 17K, I just think you can do so much better in like the 12 to 13K range, especially for cash games like you mentioned. His price is a little better on DraftKings and DraftDay. I believe he's a little bit like, I want to say he's more in the 13 to 14% of the cap range, which is, I think, more palatable for me. But I still can't believe that play Condia made the other night when he played Carter Williams against Indiana, which was just insane to me. But yeah, I kind of feel the same way about Carter Williams.
Oh, man, Condia. I mean, and we talked about this before, but I knew he was going to fade Anthony Davis last night. It seems like he's getting a leg up on everybody by fading the right person. And that Korver thing didn't even come and bite him just because he faded AD and started Nene and who else was it?
He had Nene and Webster, I think.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, and that was the ultimate combo. Wall, Nene, Webster. Man, those guys were beautiful last night. They were absolutely beautiful. Drew, you had him on a few sites, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I only played 2 sites last night. I wasn't going to play it all last night because it was a 4-game night, and I was going to try to be disciplined. And then I got the link for the Fish Cake King Challenge. I got sucked into playing, and my teams were terrible last night, so I was a little frustrated. When I didn't have AD on FanDuel, so that was a great fade, except I had Korver, which really hurt, and I had Reese over Webster. So I kind of did myself in there. And then on the Fish Cake King Challenge, I went heavy on Warriors instead of Wizards, so that didn't work out great either.
Yes, Warriors over Wizards. It could have been a good call, but then you had Jermaine O'Neal that came back and kind of got your points. So, yeah. As far as MCW, would you rather have him or Ty Lawson tonight if price was equal? Scott, I'll let you handle it first.
All right. Well, Draft Street's the only place I've even started building a lineup yet for tonight, and I have Lawson and don't have Michael Carter-Williams. So obviously there it's pretty easy. I think I just prefer Ty Lawson in general in double-ups, and if I'm throwing in GPP lineups, it's going to be Michael Carter-Williams.
I think that's probably fair. I think if price is equal, I probably like Carter Williams a little bit more just because Lawson's, the matchup with Minnesota is good for tempo and good for pace, but it's also, he's not a great defender, but he gives you a lot of negatives because he steals the ball a lot. So that's a little bit of a challenge. I think if price is the same, I'd probably lean Carter Williams, but I think the smarter way to go about just in general would be to consider Lawson more of the safer 50-50 double-up head-to-head type asset and Michael Carter Williams more of the tournament type asset.
I would agree with that. I played Lawson in the Fish Cake King Challenge. I really like Lawson this season, and that is going to be the 3 games we've talked about with Minnesota and Denver. Those 3 games are going to be the most fun games to watch tonight. I will be traveling to my in-laws, and I'll be having dinner earlier, and that's going to be at 6:30 Eastern time. So I haven't decided how I'm going to be an MVP yet. As far like you see the Verizon MVP commercials where they're looking at their phone. I have yet to figure. I mean, I guess I'm going to have to bring in my laptop and pass me the potatoes as I'm as I'm figuring out, because that's the last 30 minutes are sometimes the most crucial, and especially with the stuff with the Hawks and the Rockets. That's going to be the biggest issue. But this Minnesota Denver game, are you looking at Kevin Love? Is he going to be a stud that you maybe want to pay for if you find value elsewhere, or do you think his price is just too high?
I definitely think he's playable. He's got a great matchup, like you mentioned. It really depends on the site and what his price is and what value you can find to put around him. In the NBA, the main thing for me is just not playing guys that you're not comfortable playing. And if you can build a lineup around him where you're happy with everyone, I think he's a great play, like he always is. I think he shot 6 for 20 the other night and still put up almost 50 DraftKings points. So he's really hard to argue with as a good play on any night. It just really depends on how you can construct the roster around him.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. And today is a day that's a little bit easier to find value, and the matchup is probably a little bit more favorable than normal for Love, too. So I think today is a day that you're more likely to use Love. If you look at kind of the splits, and I wish ESPN had it split out between 0 days rest and everything else instead of 1 day rest, 2 day rest, 3+ days rest. But on the 0 days rest, on the back-to-backs, Love is averaging just 20 points, 10 rebounds. 20 points, 14 rebounds. But only 39.6% shooting. And on all the other days, he's pretty much like 47% or better from the field, averaging like 26 to 27 points. And the rebounds are still about the same, 13 to 14. So, I think back-to-backs affect him more than a lot of other bigs because he's a jump shooter. And I think, with a couple days rest here against a front court that gives up a lot of rebounds because of the pace they play, I think it's a really great spot for Kevin Love. I think he's the top overall individual scorer tonight. And on a night where there's a lot of value, there's a lot of guys missing, I think it's pretty easy to fit him in across the industry.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those nights where you can see him scoring 60 fantasy points, just because the highest paced game of the night and the highest total, and he's, against Denver, that front court. He has just an incredible matchup tonight. Another guy, speaking of fast-paced game, Corey Brewer is a guy that is one of those tournament plays. I'm guessing, though, that you guys are with me in the fact that he is not a cash game play tonight. Scott?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I really like his game. He's just not consistent enough with getting shots, making shots, rebounding. He's really low on assists. It's a guy that is either going to have a huge game or he's going to disappoint you. So it's a guy I play in tournaments only for sure.
Yeah, I think that's the right approach with Brewer. Up-tempo helps him because he's a guy that gets out on the wings and he runs, and so the matchup helps. The other thing that helps when you look at a guy like Corey Brewer, what you want to make sure is the team he's playing is one that gives up a lot of steals, because really he garners a lot of his value from getting in the passing lanes and kind of turning that into transition. Now, Denver allows the 7th fewest steals per game. And this is one of the reasons the first game against Denver, he didn't really have a great game. He had just like 11 draft street points, something like that. So I would be cautious about Brewer tonight, even though the price is down a little bit because he hasn't been great of late. I think he's best in games that get real sloppy. And while Denver plays fast, they don't necessarily play sloppy.
Yeah, he burned a lot of people. A lot of people tried to be sneaky and use him the last time they played Denver, and it didn't work out. Are you looking at any other guys there in this game, though? High-scoring game. Somebody asked about if Rubio is in play to match with Love. What are your thoughts on matching guards with bigs, like a Chris Paul, Blake Griffin? Scott, what are your thoughts about pairing and daily fantasy pairing your smalls with your bigs?
I don't mind it in a high over-under game like this, especially when both guys are really good passers like Love and Rubio are, because they can find each other. And I think, what's the over-under on this game? Do you have that in front of you, Dave?
It's 213.
It's 213.5.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, in a high over-under game like that, I think it's great. Rubio is actually a little underpriced almost everywhere from what I've seen, and I think he's a really good play tonight. He had a pretty good game against Indiana the other night. He's right in the mid-30s in minutes almost every game. He's just a really, really safe play. I don't see like a ridiculous amount of upside in this particular game because Ty Lawson doesn't turn it over much, and they kind of take the ball away from the point guard position a lot when Lawson doesn't have it in his hands, which kind of cuts down on the chance for steals. But I think he's a really solid bet for like 32 to 38 fantasy points tonight.
Did you guys see this picture earlier? He tweeted this picture. Kevin Love tweeted this picture, and the only caption was "Really, guys?" And it's basically, if you don't know, they switched their faces, but I don't know. I could not quit laughing at that. A few other questions. Tristan Thompson versus a soft Miami front court. Drew, I'll let you take that one.
I find it funny the way the industry views Miami's front court as really soft and tries to attack it. But they're third best in defensive efficiency against power forwards, and they're middle of the pack against centers. So, I mean, this isn't like soft like a Bucks front court. It's the weakness for Miami. So people think of it as a bigger weakness than it actually is. It's their weakness, but it's not weak relative to the rest of the league. And power forwards are guys that I want no part of against Miami for two reasons. One, they're usually tasked with either covering LeBron more than you would like them to and presents potential foul trouble, or they're shifted to the bench quickly when Miami goes small and LeBron's playing four, and they're not usually kept out there unless they're the premier player on their team. Tristan Thompson doesn't fit the mold for either of those two situations. So Thompson is a guy that, he's boom or bust, and perhaps there's some tournament upside because he's boom or bust. But I think if anybody's going to benefit from it, it's usually going to be the center position against Miami as opposed to the power forward.
Yeah, I would definitely agree that you don't tonight is a night where you don't want to take Tristan Thompson. There are nights where you do want to take Tristan Thompson. Tonight, there's just so much value elsewhere that I think it'd be a good idea to go elsewhere for the points. And then another question, Scott, I'll let you handle this. Is Chris Paul worth rostering tonight? Do you want to pay up for him at all?
I really like Chris Paul tonight. The real question is if that game's going to be a blowout or not, which is always the question with the Clippers because I can never figure out whether it's going to be a blowout or not. Yeah, that's fair too. I avoided Chris Paul against Sacramento in the FanDuel games that started early on Saturday because I thought it was going to be a blowout, and I avoided DeMarcus Cousins in that game, and I regretted that obviously the entire day because it happened first before anything else happened, and then James Harden got scratched, and I just cried the rest of the night. But yeah, I like Chris Paul a lot tonight. It really depends on the price and what you can do around him. I prefer Kevin Love over Chris Paul. And it's going to be really hard to build a team with both of those guys on there. So I don't think I'll have Chris Paul a ton outside of probably one tournament lineup on every site.
Yeah, I think he's more of a tournament play tonight. I much rather would spend on the bigs. There's been, when people get burned sometimes, you want to have like these absolute comments, and so a lot of people have said recently that they are not going to spend any more on big men, and that because it always just screws them. Do you think there's any significance in that statement, Drew, about big men burning you versus guards? I think personally sometimes it's like it's the reverse for me. But do you think that in your estimation, who is most likely to burn you, a top player, of a guard or a post player?
It's probably a post player simply because, well, I would say it's probably a post player because there's more risk of foul trouble in bigs, unless you're Kyle Lowry, who is always in foul trouble as a guard and is the only guard in the NBA that's consistently in foul trouble. I would say that, though, if you're dealing with shooting guards, they're probably just as likely to disappoint you as a big is because they're so dependent on scoring being their primary source of fantasy points. And that usually, for those guys, usually comes down to shooting, unless they're guys like James Harden who get to the line 10 times a game, something like that. So I would say and this is how I build lineups. I tend to go with the old school season-long roto strategy of point guards and power forwards when I build lineups as well. Like on a site like DraftStreet, where you can choose any type of guard or any type of forward, or on sites that have position flexibility like DraftDay or DraftKings, where sometimes you get point guards who have shooting guard eligibility as well. I tend to try to fit as many point guards and power forwards in my lineup because those tend to be the most stable, consistent source of points in terms of the stats that they accumulate.
Yeah, and you also have the whole point guard. They're the ones that have the ball in their hands, and they're most likely to get assists. And I think, and I talked about it yesterday, I think my Draft Street background, like it kind of jades me to like the shooting guards on different sites, like even on FanDuel, on Draft Day, where I'll tend to stay away. And our boy Davis he loves the Gunners, so he loves Monte, he loves Aflalo and DeRozan. He wrote about Aflalo tonight. Your take on those Gunners, Scott? Are you more likely to play them than like a point guard who is a decent matchup? Basically, do you have a problem with playing a gunning shooting guard?
It really depends on the scoring system to me. I do a lot of the same stuff Drew was just talking about, where I remember when I played on draft day before I started working here, I would try and play 4 point guards almost every night if I could, just because like Steve Blake will have shooting guard eligibility, and you're just getting more secure value out of that in a 50-50. In a tournament, obviously, you can go for the upside with a guy like DeMar DeRozan, but it really depends on the site. Like, I play a ton more of Monte Ellis and Rudy Gay and stuff like that on DraftKings just because you don't get penalized for anything there. And if Rudy Gay goes 11 for 37, you're not losing any. You're just getting the points for the shots he's making and the stats he's accumulating. So when I make a lineup on DraftKings compared to DraftStreet, it's looking – I rarely have more than 2 players in common just because of the huge differences in scoring system.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about it in the past, but like you said, on draft day or on DraftKings, if I can play a point guard in that shooting guard spot, then they automatically have that. They have a little bit of, I don't know. For some reason, I just have a really hard time playing those like 7K guys like Aflalo. I'm just not sure. I'll probably never play him or Dirk this year. I don't know what it is. I cannot play Dirk. I just cannot find it within me to play him. And I've seen a lot of other people playing him, but I just can't do it. Scott, other point guards that you see, though, around tonight as far as people might want to have in their rosters?
We've talked about Teague a little bit already. I think he's going to play probably 38 to 42 minutes tonight with all those other guys out. If Schroeder's going to play 10 to 15 even at shooting guard, that probably leaves at least 38 for Teague, which he's been approaching anyway. I think he's a great volume play. We talked about Lawson a little bit. Let's see who else I wrote about here today. Paul, like I said, is a little high price as I'm going love, and it sounds like you guys are too. Let's see. Michael Carter-Williams, we talked about a little bit. He's a great play tonight. I like Brandon Jennings quite a bit tonight also as a tournament play. I just don't see Kirk Heinrich shutting him down, and I really like the way Jennings is playing now. And I never thought in a million years I'd say that, but it looks like he has no confidence in his jumper, but it actually makes him look like a better player. I think he's had
all Jennings has ever needed was a lack of confidence, and he can.
He gets to points where I don't think I've ever seen him pass up a shot before, and he's not even thinking about shooting. It's insane, but he's just got so many weapons around him right now that even though Detroit's not really a good team, they're really fun to watch, and Jennings is making the right pass, and he's got Monroe, Drummond, and Josh Smith, who are all great finishers around the rim. That's probably one of my favorite under-the-radar plays tonight.
Drew, did he leave out anybody?
A couple guys. I mean, I think Goran Dragic, as long as Bledsoe remains out against Portland and Damian Lillard, especially at home for Dragic. You know, in the opener at home against Portland, he had 26, 6, and 9 in 41 minutes, and that was with Bledsoe playing. And he's been playing really well of late. I always shy away from taking point guards against Miami because they really flush out the point guards, especially on ball screens. And they really push the point guards far away from the basket, and it becomes like hockey assists for the point guards instead of normal assists where you need 2 passes to score in Miami. So I shy away from him, but he put up a great line against Miami, 35 draft free points. He's playing really well. I think that's a good matchup. And then the guy that I think is probably the best value play at the point guard position, unless, as Scott mentioned, if Harden is out, I think it becomes Jeremy Lin. But for right now, assuming Harden may play, I think Jameer Nelson is a really good value play against Philadelphia. High-paced game. Jameer is from that area, and while the game isn't being played in that area, he does have good history against Philadelphia. But I just think, in general, he's a bit underpriced. And if you look at outside of last game, last night he played 30 minutes in a blowout, 39 minutes the game before that, 38 minutes the game before that, 35 minutes the game before that. You're getting a lot of on-court time for Jameer, and his price is down a little bit. On Draft Street, as an example, he's priced at 10.9. Last year, he averaged 26 draft street points per game. So he's almost close to a 2x plus 5 value based on his average last year with his current price. So I think he's a good value as well.
Yeah, I know Andrew loves him tonight. He's been chirping about him in the office all day. So.
Oh, I'm kind of. He is on. I have one season-long team. He's on my one season-long team, so I pay attention to him, and I actually rostered him on Draft Street last night just because he was the last piece of the puzzle. So I got a little bit lucky, but his first half was absolutely terrible. I mean, he was miserable, and I think may have had 2 fantasy points, if that. And then in the third quarter, he just kind of went off. Oladipo picked up his 4th foul, and all of a sudden, it was the Jameer show. And they had a great third quarter when they started to pull away, and he was. I think that they started putting him and Oladipo out there, and I think that's what they need to do. They need to play them both together instead of having Victor run the one.
Yeah, the other thing about Jameer that's nice in this type of game is one of the things that sucks about Jameer in general from a fantasy perspective is he doesn't do anything in the hustle categories, right? He's negative value in steals for a point guard. He's negative value in steals for like a power forward. He just doesn't contribute at all. But Philadelphia turns the ball over so much that you'll probably luck into an additional steal that you wouldn't get from Jameer in a normal game. Philadelphia gives up 9.3 steals per game. So while I think it's great for a guy like Oladipo, who does a lot of his traffic in the hustle categories, I think it also helps guys like Jameer, who usually don't contribute at all in that area. You might get a cheap extra steal, and on a lot of sites, that's the equivalent of an extra bucket for a night. So,
yep,
yeah, definitely. And if you have, I've someone asked in the chat about the 4th game in 5 nights, which is certainly something to consider. I think that would probably be more to consider though with a follow, because of just needing your legs to shoot. So that's why I'll probably be staying away from a follow. On the other side, kind of what to watch for, you have Spencer Hawes, who is going to he's probably going to play. The coach says. Colin in the chat mentioned that Coach Brown said that they expect him to play. They want to bring Thad Young off the bench. I'm staying away from Thaddeus tonight. I'm guessing you guys are as well. We don't even know what's really going on there, so I would prefer not to have him on any of my rosters. The forward spot, though, small forward, that's always kind of an interesting. It's been the most interesting position this year because I feel like there's not a lot of people that fit into that small forward category that you want to play sometimes, especially with LeBron not really producing this year. But LeBron playing against his old team, the revenge factor, does that come into play? Who are some small forwards that you're looking at, Scott?
I thought about LeBron, but it's just really hard to spend on him right now because he's disappointing you more often than not. And when you're giving up so much elsewhere to get him, I really want him to be like locked in like Kevin Love is, where I know I'm getting 40 plus points and I have a chance to get 60 or whatever. It's really hard to not take these Wizards guys, but I'm so concerned about how many games they've played over the last, what have they played, like 5 in the last 8 days or something like that? I tweeted this morning, it feels like they play every night. I feel like I'm sweating Martell Webster every single night right now. And I think I'm going to stay away from the Wizards' big guys tonight, and I'll probably end up using some Trevor Ariza because he's a little bit more rested than these other guys, and he looked pretty healthy last night. Webster, if his price is down places, I'll be playing him a little bit. Cartier Martin's a small forward a lot of places. If he's starting at shooting guard, he's the best value play at small forward for me. Evan Turner, I kind of like in that Sixers Magic game. He's been pretty much a lock for high 30s in fantasy points every game, except the ones where I play him, and I think he's a lock for 35+ fantasy points. He's a really good play. I can't really decide where I'm at on Paul George. I don't know if you guys want to chime in on that one a little bit. That's one I've been debating a little bit today. I'm probably not going to spend on him, but you've got to like the matchup a little bit with Michael Kidd-Gilchrist only playing like 20 to 22 minutes a game right now. I don't know where you guys are at on that one.
They also have Jeff Taylor, though, who I've talked about, he's sometimes he's on the shooting guard, sometimes he's on the small forward, but he is also a really good defender. But the bottom line is, usually I try not to worry about blowouts. This is a game, though, I'm worried about a blowout.
Yeah, so
the line is only 7.5, though, and this is at Charlotte, and it's going to be the lowest scoring game of the night. I probably will stay away from George. It all depends on where his price is, though. If he is in that, if he's not in that upper tier and he's still kind of in that upper middle tier, then I don't have a problem with playing him, especially after what he's been capable of doing here recently. Drew, what are your thoughts about Paul George?
Probably a better tournament play than a cash game play, just because of some of the risk factors you mentioned, but also, while Charlotte's been bad against small forwards, I think they ranked 24th in defensive efficiency when I was just looking that up. They're another team that this year they're not turning the ball over a ton. Just 6.7 steals allowed per game. You know, a lot of George's value is built on steals. And Charlotte's defense has improved this year. Part of that is just because they've slowed the game down so much. They're really taking the air out of the basketball. And Al Jefferson hasn't played a lot yet. That'll make the defensive numbers get worse as the season goes on. But I think just in general, there's safer ways to spend your money. And from on most sites that I've checked, George is pretty pricey right now.
Yeah.
Definitely.
One guy I didn't mention was Luol Deng, who's going to be a pretty decent volume play most nights now with Rose out again. Him and Boozer are both pretty solid volume plays at forward. It's really hard for anybody to get excited about either one of those guys for the most part, but I mean, you saw what both of them did against Utah. They did have overtime in that game, but there's just so much volume there. Deng might start playing 46 minutes a game the rest of the way again if they're actually going to try and be a playoff team.
Yeah, Drew has talked about that extensively. If you follow him on Twitter, he's talked about how many minutes that they're going to get there at basically over the next 4 months. And he thinks that something bad's going to happen to both of them. But for now, write them.
Like if you're supposed, if in normal flow of day, if you know that a crime is about to happen, you're supposed to report it, right? Like I know that Joakim Noah is going to get plantar fasciitis, and I know that Tom Thibodeau is going to run him into the ground, and the foot issues are going to flare up again. I feel like I should be reporting this to somebody. And so that's why I've been vocal about it on Twitter, because Deng and Noah are going to play a ton of minutes. Boozer's going to play more now, but they're still going to sub Taj Gibson in because they like Gibson's defense. But Deng and Noah just aren't going to get off the floor. and it's going to be a challenge going forward for them to stay healthy. But while their price is down, their price is depressed because it's priced at them playing with Rose. Take advantage. So I think Noah is probably the better value of the two because he hasn't had a breakout game yet. But I think Deng is undervalued, as Scott mentioned, especially on sites that aren't going to deduct for missed field goals because his field goal percentage is going to take a hit, but he's going to be heaving. I mean, they were running Luol Deng ISOs left and right, which is just disgusting basketball to watch.
Yeah, he can't dribble. How has he been in the NBA this long? He can't dribble at all still. Like, it's ridiculous.
He is he's a good play, and Evan Turner on Draft Street is a guy who's only $13K, I think, and that price is really soft. In that Bulls game, though, you talked about Joakim Noah, and Scott, he's only priced $9,700. It looks like on Draft Day. Man, that's like one of those. I feel like sometimes you just like tease us, and Peter does the same thing. You tease, and you just want us to play a person. So Joakim Noah is in that tease range for me, where it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to fade him for that price.
I think it makes it more fun when you have like guys like that you don't really want to play that bad, but the price is just so good. I know Markness at Draft Street does it to me in football all the time. He's always tricking me into playing CJ Spiller, and he gets me every week with CJ Spiller, every single week. It's like I'm not going to play CJ Spiller this week, and then he's $5K. It's like,
let's get to some questions, and then we'll get to the rapid fire there on Draft Day, and we'll get Drew, your thoughts. I'm not sure if you can talk about it or not. Like it's almost like since you created the Pick 5, it's almost like the whole thing on game day where what's his face, Herb Street can't pick. He can't pick the games that he's calling. So we'll probably have to have you step out on that one. But some questions we have. Let's see, Lance Stevenson or Oladipo tonight? Drew, I'll start with you.
That's a good one. I'll go Oladipo. I think this game sets up really nice for Oladipo's skill set. Fast-paced, up-tempo, sloppy game, lots of different ways he can contribute, as long as he stays in the starting lineup, which I know yesterday went back and forth about 8 times before they finally confirmed that he was in the starting lineup. I'll take Oladipo.
Scott?
Yeah, I'm going the same way. Everything you just said makes perfect sense. Sloppy game is perfect for Oladipo. I didn't even realize Oladipo started last night after all of that ridiculousness with Tobias Harris being in and out, and then they announced Mo Harkless was starting. And oh man, that was an interesting one that happened way before tip too. So it was kind of nice to see that. But yeah, I think it's got to be Oladipo. Just a closer game that fits his style better.
Thoughts on Oklahoma City tonight, Scott?
I like Durant in this one a lot. I know he's going to have Kawhi on him a ton, and he's probably going to see Danny Green a little bit. But anytime that you're spending on Durant, you're going to want it to be a close game, and this game has all the makings of a really good one to watch tonight. So you get that added bonus that you're probably going to be watching that game and have Durant in it. Outside of that, I think Westbrook has a nice matchup with Tony Parker, but the Spurs team defense in general is just so good that it's really hard to target these guys when they're not at a depressed price. And Westbrook's been playing well lately. His price is back up to where it should be, really. And outside of Durant, I'm probably staying away from this game unless you really trust Tim Duncan, which I don't.
And speaking of Tim Duncan, someone asked about Tony Parker. This team is just blowing out everybody. I mean, it's ridiculous. They're not getting over 25 minutes because they're blowing out people, and their prices continue to go down. And you want to take them, but I mean, you can't really trust them. And I feel like I can't trust Tony Parker because just the blowout factor. I think there's some better options there tonight. Let's see, Afflalo or Kevin Martin in a cash game. Drew?
I guess I could go with Kevin Martin just because I'm a little bit more concerned about the lack of rest for Afflalo, but I think those are both nice matchups. I usually don't spend on shooting guard except maybe on like FanDuel. So I'm not looking at those guys a ton, but I guess I'd go Martin just because I'm concerned about how much Afflalo has played of late.
Scott, Klay Thompson, or Oladipo?
I'm going to go Oladipo because I don't usually play Klay Thompson on the road.
Drew, you and I talked about that last night. You don't subscribe to that theory that that Klay is a terrible road player.
Well, I mean, the numbers support it. I mean, the numbers support the idea that he's been a much poorer shooter away from Golden State, but it doesn't make a ton of sense to me. I don't know why he'd be, a much better shooter in one area than the other. And his sample size isn't exactly huge on this. It's just a couple seasons. I played him last night at New Orleans because I thought the matchup was good. And I really love that New Orleans scorekeeper for guards. And he got his 8 assists, which I don't think Klay will ever get again. So I took a chance on him last night. I think I'd be more concerned about Klay on a back-to-back than I would be Klay on the road because he gets almost all his points from jump shooting. And so on a back-to-back on a night he logged heavy minutes last night, I'd be a little bit more concerned there.
And no matter what, Oladipo is going to get his minutes tonight. And Klay, like you said, on a back-to-back with him being a shooting guard, I would much rather have Oladipo. I mean, Oladipo is just explosive. Did you see that dunk that he did last night? Oh
yeah, I caught the video of it. It was pretty nice.
It was.
I actually thought that was cooler than Walls, but Walls was obviously awesome too.
Yeah, both of them had really good games, or really good dunks rather. Kufus or Bogut tonight? That's an interesting one. Scott, I'll let you take this since we're about to do the pick 5.
I like Kufus' size against the Celtics more than I like Bogut tonight. I mean, Bogut's been playing really well, but his value is more as a defender than anything else. And he can get lost on offense at any time. I think he's averaging like 5.8 shots a game or 6.8 shots a game or something like that on the season. I just think you're going to get a lot more value out of Kufus with a big body against the Celtics team that plays a lot of 6'7" guys as big guys.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that comment from Scott, Dallas is a pretty big jump shooting team. So with Bogut getting a lot of his value defensively against a jump shooting team, that usually suppresses block totals. So that's a negative for Bogut as well.
All right, we had another question, Waller Curry, and good segue because that question is actually in the pick 5 or the rapid fire on draft day. DraftDay.com/rapid-fire-NBA. LeBron James or Kevin Love tonight? Drew?
I'll go Kevin Love. We talked about this a little bit earlier in the show that Love is just a more reliable source of points right now. And the one thing that I wrote about with LeBron, I think this was 2 days ago, the fact that his steals and blocks are down. One of my Twitter followers pointed this out to me this year, and some theorize that it might be because of the back issues that he's been dealing with. Part of it is minutes. His minutes are at a career low right now. But just 0.9 steals per game and 0.4 blocks per game, if you're going to pay 20% of your cap, you need contribution across the board. And that's been a problem for LeBron. Even though he's been incredibly efficient offensively, he hasn't really shown up on the defensive end as big, so I'd go Kevin Love.
I would definitely agree. The next one is tricky. Scott, you tricked us with this one. Chris Paul versus Carmelo. I mean, the Knicks, they just don't have a whole lot outside of Carmelo these days. This is an interesting one. I'm still inclined to take Chris Paul, and I feel like though that it might be. This might be a night where Carmelo outscores him and Scott has his way with us. Drew, what says you?
I can't fathom a situation that I take Carmelo Anthony over Chris Paul in anything, in anything at life. So I'll take Chris Paul.
And you also have the fact that there are deductions on draft day for missed shots. And we all know that Carmelo is perfectly capable of putting up a lot of missed shots. That Chris Paul game on Sunday you were talking about, Scott, he had like a pedestrian first half, and then all of a sudden he just kind of went off.
Yeah, he just decided to do whatever he wanted in the fourth quarter. So
exactly, that was pretty weird, or not weird, but pretty awesome. Cause
that's like every Chris Paul game. Like if you watch every Chris Paul game, basically he just he kind of goes through the first quarter and a half, and then once it gets into crunch time in the second half, he totally times out the clock to get the most possessions, which I love about Chris Paul. It's like my favorite thing watching him. You can watch him start playing 2-for-1 games with like a minute 20 seconds left in the half, which is just awesome. And then so he hogs the ball so nobody screws up the 2-for-1s late in the half. And then he does the same thing late in the game just to close games and put them away. He's so fun to watch, and I still can't believe his lack of playoff success, because that's the one knock on Chris Paul.
Yeah, we love Chris Paul. He's awesome. Double-double. I mean, he's pretty much guaranteed a double-double every night with points and assists. This one makes you wince a little bit, like what we talked about earlier. Drew, you said you were going to avoid them both in cash games, but you have to pick one.
Thanks, Scott.
Al Horford or Dwight Howard?
I would play Dwight over Al when there's no salary constraints here in a pick 5, and I would not feel good about it, but I'll do it.
Normally, I think this would be an easy one with Dwight over Horford, especially given Horford's lack of minutes. But something about them not having anybody at the shooting guard position, and Horford only took 4 shots in the first half, made 3 of them, and then made all 4 of his shots in the third quarter. But something tells me that he's going to take more than 15 shots tonight. And he needs to. He needs to take 20 shots. But I will still give the nod to Howard. Again, it's a trap. It's a booby trap set by Scott. Wall or Curry? Last night, this one got you, Drew. You chose Curry over Wall. Are you going back to that well?
Yeah, damn me for being price sensitive last night and taking Curry everywhere over Wall, because he was a little bit cheaper, and I thought I could save a little bit of money that I didn't put to good use, so it didn't really work out for me. Wall's just playing so well right now, and I know Milwaukee statistically ranks pretty well against point guards, but that makes no sense to me because they don't really have a great defensive point guard. Brandon Knight is okay defensively, but he's not locked down. He hasn't played a ton, so it's mostly been Ridnour and Walters, which is just confusing. And they have no rim protectors right now. So Wall should be able to get to the rim at will. Milwaukee doesn't turn it over a ton, which does hurt Wall in terms of grabbing all the steals. But his minutes and his usage rate is more secure now with Bradley Beal out of the offense, so I'll go Wall.
I have no clue how this game is only a 3.5 point spread. I cannot fathom it. Why? I mean, because I think that Washington is.
It's actually gone down to 2.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been trying to figure that one out all day too.
So, but I'll go ahead and go Curry. Just because it's going to be a real fun game, and I have a feeling that this game is going to get out of hand, even though Vegas doesn't think so. I think so. So I'll go Curry. The last one, Deng versus Aldridge.
I'll take Aldridge. I think that's a big skill mismatch in terms of the individual matchups, and I like the fact that Aldridge is on the road, so the game's a little bit more competitive. His performance has actually been better on the road this year because they haven't had to worry about sitting him in blowouts at home. And while I like Deng, and I think he gets a nice boost in terms of his value, I do think he has his hands a little bit more full tonight in terms of his style of game against Detroit. Josh Smith is the primary defender, and the rebounds are going to be a little bit tougher, which is where he boosts a lot of his value as well. So I'll take Aldridge.
Very nice. As I'm queuing up the song, Drew, tell everybody again where they can reach you.
Yeah, all our stuff is over at RotoExperts.com under the Daily tab. It's under Daily Fantasy Rundown. That's where you can get the subscription content from Mike Leone and myself, written every day, sent out as we were doing the show today. The analysis was sent out today. Emailed directly to your inbox, and we've got a cheat sheet package. We've got a scouting reports and analysis package. We've got bundles of those 2 packages. And with all those, you get our lineup alerts, which we kind of came up with in the industry and has since been copied a little bit. But it basically delivers information right to your inbox as tip comes, all the lineup and injury news, along with analysis on how it impacts guys.
And Scott, we talked about the draft day thing, draftday.com/snow, the new promotion. anything else that you want to kind of plug for draft day?
Yeah, we actually have a 10K worm, which is our 109 GPP on Friday. So I think we have qualifiers still in the lobby for that today, assuming they didn't fill up while I was on the show here. So you can qualify for that for, I think the smallest one's $5. There's also an $11 and a $25 qualifier for that. And then you can also buy in anytime tomorrow if you're eating some turkey and want to buy into the worm, and all the way through till Friday night. So that's our big thing coming up this weekend. And then, of course, we have all our NFL games, the Frenzy, the Benjamin, all that stuff on Sunday. And we've got all the cashing through the snow stuff like you talked about earlier in the show. So it should be a fun weekend.
Fun fact, the first major tournament that I won was I think it was the Worm. I had...
Back when it was $91?
It was, maybe it wasn't the Worm. It was a 109 qualifier. It was a 10-man 109. I won it, and it was like a $1,000 entry. There's only five.
Oh, the dime. That was back when the dime was around.
The dime. That's what it was.
5 entry, 1K.
Oh yeah, and I won it, and like that was like one of the happiest moments ever. I thought that I had made it because I won $3,000. So.
You did make it. Look where you're at now.
I'm with the two studs. So that is Fantasy Insiders, the Insiders NBA show. Appreciate, Scott, you joining us. Drew, you as well. We're looking forward to Draft Day again being the sponsor of the show. Going to be fun. Maybe Friday we can set up our first bracket contest. Maybe Monday with the holidays. Who knows? But it's coming. And with that will be fun little prizes, shirts. I mailed out a bunch of shirts today, and we'll do it again. Drew, here, I need to give you full screen. You need to stand up because it's
a dancing draft day.
It's
shirt.
blocking you. Oh, fair enough.
That was for Tom.
This is my jam right here. All right, guys, have a good Thanksgiving, and we'll catch you on Friday.